Good morning from Moscow. It's Monday the 27th of July, and once again in the Russian papers today, what comes through very clearly is Russia's frustration, Russia's disappointment that the Trump administration has not pressured Ukraine, or has not been able to pressure Ukraine into accepting Russia-friendly peace terms, and that the so-called alleged spirit of anchorage from the Trump-Putin Alaska summit last year has all but evaporated. Mind you, it was only Russian officials, not American, who were talking about a spirit of anchorage. But even so, in its editorial today, Nezavisima Gazeta wonders, is there an alternative to anchorage? Now, laid out here is what Moscow had been looking for from Donald Trump. Its logic was, and still is, that it is necessary to find a force that will force Zelensky to accept defeat, accept the situation on the ground, abandon territorial claims, and put this in a document. Trump seemed to be such a force. That was the spirit of anchorage. Now, for Trump, either not everything is so clear-cut, or the Ukraine issue is simply not a priority. It is unlikely that Moscow will reconsider its approach. In other words, the Kremlin still wants someone to put pressure on Kyiv. But who will become this force of pressure and persuasion? Trump's successor in 2 years' time? That's too long to wait, and it's too hard to predict the outcome of the US elections. Europe? It refused to take Moscow's concerns into account, both individually and collectively, even before 2022. But what's more, there's also an acknowledgement that Moscow is under strong pressure from its closest allies. We hear what both Lukashenko in Belarus and Tokayev, Kazakhstan, are saying. This was not the case a year ago. It means something has changed. The task of the Russian authorities is to try to understand what exactly has changed and find an adequate response. At the weekend, President Tokayev of Kazakhstan used a protocol meeting with Putin to publicly call for peace in Ukraine. Tokayev called for the conflict in Ukraine to be frozen. Moskovsky Komsomolets writes this: "We're back to square one. This is the recurrent theme of last week. The meeting between Rubio and Lavrov, Tokayev's dialogue with Putin, the announcement that Zelensky will visit Trump, and the discussion about this. It all shows that attempts to resolve the Russia-Ukraine conflict have gone full circle and returned to where they started. Certainly Vladimir Putin's messaging, his narrative on the war, hasn't changed. As Komsomolskaya Pravda reports, Russia's president is still claiming we didn't start a war and international law is on our side. Izvestia, the special military operation, was a response to the war that the Kyiv regime, backed by the West, started in the Donbass in 2014, said Vladimir Putin when he met servicemen on Navy Day. A reminder that in 2014, Russia intervened militarily in eastern Ukraine, and in February 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Kommersant reports that the ban on exporting petrol from Russia will be extended until the end of the year, but restrictions on the export of diesel may be lifted earlier. Finally, from the joke section of Moskovsky Komsomolets. Not many people know this, but that little pocket in your jeans, it's for your salary. And this. On a long-distance train, a conductor goes from compartment to compartment, asking, "Any foreigners here?" Everyone replies that there are no foreigners. So then the conductor says, "Nina, turn off the air conditioning. It's just our people on the train."